Then he repeats it again in verse 9. Thus saith the Lord, for 3 transgressions of Tyrus and for 4, I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because they delivered up the whole captivity to Edom, and remember not the brotherly covenant. Verse 11, he repeats it again. Thus saith the Lord, for 3 transgressions of Edom and for 4, I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because he did pursue his brother with a sword, did cast out off all pity, and his anger did tear perpetually, and he kept his wrath forever. So in that chapter, not once, verse 3, verse 6, verse 9, verse 11, it shows that he reaches an end of his mercy. God can reach an end of his mercy. It's a good guideline to think in my life and your life that I don't want to keep tempting God. I don't want to keep tempting him, but walk as steadfastly, as faithfully to his commandments, to his word that I possibly can, because I don't want to push God toward he finally says I can't go 3, 4 transgressions. I just will have to stop it and do something about it. In the subject I was looking at, the Gentiles. Let's go back to Genesis 10 and 5. The book of Genesis, chapter 10. We are Gentiles by nature. By nature, I am a Gentile. A Gentile is any nation outside of the Asiatic nations and the Jewish nation. Let's go further in what I said. The Asiatic nations and the African nations are not Gentiles. The European nations, Western nations are Gentiles. Everything after its own kind, every seed, we'll get that scripture in a moment, after its own kind. There were basically 3 seeds that the population of the world, as we know it and have known it in recent history, since the flood, in fact, was divided up into. Chapter 10, verse 5, Genesis, by these were the isles of the Gentiles divided in their lands, every one after his tongue, after their families, in their nations. Now, go back to verse 1. Now these are the generations of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And unto them were born sons born after the flood. The sons of Japheth, Gomer, Magog, Mediah, Javan, Tubal, and Meshach, and Tyrus. Then goes on down with the rest of that generation. These 3 boys, because they were the only living beings on the earth after the flood. Their father Noah, his wife, the 3 sons and their wives, 8 souls. 8 souls. That's the total population of the earth after the flood. God destroyed everything else. The end of all flesh, he said, is come before me in Genesis 6. The end of all flesh, except that all did not include those 8 souls. They were saved. And in verse, if you go back up, verse 24 of the 9th chapter, just back up in the 9th chapter of Genesis, verse 24. And Noah awoke from his wine, and knew what his younger son had done unto him. Now Ham was the younger son. Shem and Japheth were older boys, but Ham was the younger boy. Now, I'll dwell a minute on the sin of Ham, because I've heard people that said, what did he do to his father when his father became drunken on wine after the flood was over? What was the sin? Well, look at verse, I'm still in chapter 9, verse 20. And Noah began to be a husbandman. This was after the flood, and he planted a vineyard. And he drank of the wine and was drunken, and he was uncovered within his tent. And Ham, the father of Canaan, who was Canaan? He wasn't on the earth, but he was to be on the earth, because he became the son of Ham with a sin committed. He was the product of the sin that was committed. A father's nakedness that a son looks upon in the Old Testament by the laws of Israel, I believe that's Leviticus 2011. Leviticus 20:11 was when a son would commit incest and possess his father's wife. He uncovered his father's nakedness, and he was judged with eternal judgment for it. And Israel would judge him also. Noah was drunken. He sinned, Noah sinned. Then he allowed his son to sin by his drunkenness, not being in control of himself. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father and told his 2 brethren without. He went into the tent, saw not only his father was drunk, but his father could not cover his wife properly. A husband is to cover his wife, protect his wife. And in Leviticus 20:11, when that didn't happen, and there was incest committed in the family, then he uncovered his father's nakedness. And the man that lieth with his father's wife has uncovered his father's nakedness. Both of them shall surely be put to death. Their blood shall be upon them. This was the sin he committed. Canaan was the fruit that was born because we have no record of either one of them being put to death. They should have been put to death, but remember, the law was not yet given. The law was not yet given. So there was no law to condemn them with the law. They simply committed the sin and lived and begat sons. And Shem and Japheth took a garment, laid it upon their shoulders, went backwards and covered the nakedness of their father. They covered it up in the family. They didn't look upon their mother. They did not partake with Ham in this sin. They covered it up. They did not choose to look upon it. They went backward. They went away from it and covered it. God judged them, but he judged them this way. He judged their generation. He judged that sin in Canaan. Ham was judged, but he judged the sin also in the fruit of his body. When sin is committed in my life or your life, and it would involve not only the person, but it involves the generations that may be born of this particular sin, if that's the particular sin they commit. Incest, the sin of incest, which is a severe sin, the sin of incest in a family. And there's much of that, even today. That nature is still, that sin is still in man. That's still in man. And it was propagated by Ham. And now, and they didn't look on his, and Noah woke from his wine and knew what his younger son had done unto him. Now notice he cursed the seed. He cursed Canaan, the seed, his grandson, by the fact that Ham was his son. And he said, cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall, a servant of servants. That nation